This is the Charles Cook Podcast, where lovers of liberty and individual rights in Tennessee go to get information, focusing on state and local issues from Bristol to Memphis, discussing the important issues with facts, truths, and opinions based on constitutional principles. Remember, we stimulate, but never indoctrinate your mind. Welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast.
Well, hello, everyone. Glad to be back for another podcast. Today, I've got a very interesting guest for a lot of folks that follow Tennessee news here in the state of Tennessee. Before we get started with my guest, I want you to make sure you follow and like my content and share it, especially this one. This is a very important guest. So with that being said, I'm going to bring in Brandon Lewis with the Tennessee Conservative. So welcome, Brandon, and tell us, a lot of my viewers may not, or hopefully most of my viewers should know about the Tennessee Conservative News. I've talked about you on my podcast before and what you all do, so I wanted to have you on and kind of talk about what the Tennessee Conservative News is working on and what people need to know about what's going on and how folks can help you all be more successful.
Well, I appreciate what you do. There are so few folks that know anything about what's going on in Tennessee government. They may watch 16 hours of Fox News and listen to 30 hours of podcasts a week, but it's all about federal stuff. And to me, that's like checking weather in another state that you don't live in, because you have very little impact on federal issues, but state and local are things that you can have a direct impact and immediate impact on. You can point at things and say, hey, we've made a serious difference. You can sit down with your legislators, you can sit down with your city council, county commission, etc., and make sure that our beautiful state of Tennessee does not turn into California. And so I appreciate what you do, helping folks keep informed.
Yeah, and I've got your information as running across the bottom of the screen as a ticker there, kind of get people to your website. Yeah, I mean, you see things the way I do. Everything starts local and state here, and it's as you said, so many people get focused on what's going on in the federal government. There's all the news from Fox News or Newsmax or CNN. Most people don't get what's going on here locally. So just a short, tell people what really got you to want to cover the state level.
So I had worked for Senator Corker, Congressman Desjardins, a bunch of state and local folks, wrote a book called How to Raise Money for Political Office. And I was involved in a bunch of campaigns, state Senate, state House, judges, county commission, and really cut my teeth in politics working on the campaign side of things. I just really enjoyed it, primarily fundraising, but then later campaign management. And I've done a lot of that here recently just as a volunteer. I used to get paid to do it, and now I write checks to people and help, which is kind of what happens over time, I suppose, if you don't want to be in it all the time. And I took about a 6-year break when I sold my painting business, which is weird. I started a painting business and built it up large and sold it. And then I started a thing called the Academy for Professional Painting Contractors in 2014. And it wasn't until 2020 that I got back into politics, and it was primarily because our state government had shut down businesses or allowed them to be shut down, pushed mask mandates that were ineffective, vaccine mandates that were ineffective, shamed people for going to church, tried to cancel holidays. And these weren't Democrats, these were Republicans. And I just got, it lit a fire under me. And in I think April of 2020, I led a protest on the Market Street Bridge. And the media ridiculed us, completely ridiculed us. Of course, fast forward to now, we know that it was all a scam and that they were inaccurate and incorrect. They've never issued an apology. Bill Lee's never issued an apology. William Lambert, Cameron Sexton, no apologies ever for businesses put out of business, people left to die in the hospitals. Like, not even, I'm sorry, we got it wrong. None of that. And so during the middle of all that stuff, I was like, the only way that we're going to be able to get the truth out about this is if we start our own news publication. And I didn't know, and I still don't know that much, to be honest, about running a news publication. We are less a bunch of professional journalists. We are more a passionate group of Confederate conservatives, and I mean that in its original definition. Folks that are just ragtag put together. We've got some great grassroots support all over the state. And so we are, fast forward now 4 years plus, the state's largest and, in my opinion, only conservative news alternative, because we can't be bought or purchased. We have one other news publication, and I will just say this, the Tennessee Star does good work sometimes, but if the establishment gives them $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, they will straight up write whatever they are told to write. We will not do that. Campaign ads, which we don't ever get any of, does not change our editorial content, which is probably why we don't get any of them. And so that's my story. And so we started covering specifically the legislature and really focusing on that and state level government. And what I have found over the last 4.5 years has not been very good. It is essentially, and I hate it because it's like you want to give people good news. I would say today we've had some of the best news on a few pieces here in our county and in the state, but largely what you discover is that Republicans campaign one way, but they vote another, and 90+% of their campaign money comes from special interest outside of the district. And so the money talks, and the constituents just have to, they're in second place if they're even a thought at all, unless they feel like they're going to lose their position. And so we have been trying consistently, Charles, to push legislators not far to the right at all, but just to be in somewhat of alignment with their conservative voters. And for that, we have been ridiculed, lambasted, called every name in the book by leadership. But, we just keep telling the truth, and that's why we're so effective.
Yeah, and so we hear, and you're going to get a chuckle out of this when I say it, we hear the Tennessee red to the roots all the time. So why not call it the Tennessee Republican? And I know the answer to that. Not all Republicans are conservative. And so I think you made it the right thing. I listen to, when I get up in the morning to get ready for work and everything, I listen to Breitbart News. And there's a quote on there that I hear, and you may have heard it on my podcast before. I want to read you this quote, and then I want you to talk about what you see from this quote in the Tennessee legislature. I want you to understand that this is a fight, this is a war, and it's not just a war against the cultural left. It's those on our side who falsely claim they are fighting on our behalf, but simply are saying to you what you want to hear and aren't willing to fight for what you believe in. Andrew Breitbart.
There is a small minority of Republicans in the state of Tennessee that are conservative. It's probably 20% of the entire General Assembly. And the reason that there aren't more is really 2 or 3 reasons. Number one is, when it comes time to fight for their constituents, if it means that they will lose corporate campaign money, they're out. If it means they will be relegated to political obscurity and punished by leadership, they're out. If it means their bills are going to be killed to fight for you, they're out. If it means they can't climb the ladder and get a committee appointment, they're out. And so it doesn't take much. I think a lot of these lawmakers go up there conservative, or thinking they're going to be conservative, and they really don't know the full court press that's going to be put on them to abandon their constituents, and it is immediate and it is orchestrated. If you think that being hazed or peer pressured in college or high school is bad, you should go up at the General Assembly as a freshman. I mean, it is wait in line, know your place, etc. And so there are far greater pressures, and there's a lot more homage paid to the corporations, to the government employees, to the state government apparatus by the Republican leadership than there ever is the constituents. The constituents can beg and scream and holler until they are hoarse. Leadership barely hears it, unless they get defeated. Then they listen, right? They get nervous because they're afraid they're going to lose their little fiefdom. But aside from that, they're just not very responsive, and it's very disingenuous. Every election, Charles, everybody goes to speak at every Lincoln Day dinner, all across the state. I don't think I've ever heard someone be called out for being a RINO at a Lincoln Day dinner. It doesn't matter if they have the worst voting record in the state. It doesn't matter if they have voted for sanctuary cities. It doesn't matter if they voted to give illegal aliens professional licenses. It doesn't matter if they voted for abortion exceptions. It doesn't matter if they voted to let Democrats vote in Republican primaries over and over again. Oh, this is one of the most conservative. We were just so glad to have harumph, etc. And people get tired of it. And so I don't know. I've wandered off the reservation there. But it's just a quote about the truth regarding the deception in conservative politics, not conservative politics, Republican politics in the state of Tennessee. But, we're not the only people that have that problem. It's all over the nation.
Yeah, and it is. And, it's what we run into is, especially the more local it gets, we have that connection with the folks here with us, just like the city council or the county commission or the state rep. I mean, for me, I know my state rep, and personally, he's a good guy. But it's just like I'm seeing today by looking at your publication and looking at some of the things coming from Gary Humble's Tennessee stand, my rep, Rick Eldridge, is, you've seen what he's done with this National Guard bill, and then he's voted against Elaine Davis's, and I knew he was going to do that. I spent about 30 minutes talking with him on the phone about it. But this is where we're at, and it seems like the longer they're there, the more they cave to the establishment. You know what I'm saying? And so we have to look at politicians as tools. They may be good guys, they may be good ladies, but if the tool is not functioning the correct way, it's got to be replaced.
Replacement is the answer, and it is about the only answer. And I believe replacement at the top is what we really need to see here in Tennessee. Cameron Sexton, Randy McNally give all these committee people marching orders. The moment that you accept a committee appointment, you've basically said, if you want to keep it, now you may keep it one session if you go off the reservation and you don't follow the marching orders, but you don't do anything in the Senate or the House without Randy McNally or Cameron Sexton's written permission. And who was it recently? Jeremy Faison said, "We don't tell our members how to vote." I'm like, the heck you don't.
Right.
It not only do you all tell them how to vote, it comes from every direction. It's widely known. Every lawmaker I talk to in confidence tells me about it. And so the corruption is at the top, and it goes all the way down through government. It's like if you go to a business and the secretary is surly, and then you talk to the operations manager and he's got a bad attitude, and then you move up to the regional manager and he's got a bad attitude and he doesn't care about you as a customer. I bet you when you walk into that CEO's office, you're going to find the exact same attitude, because every organization tends to mirror the leadership, and we just have very weak leadership at the top. And the handful of people that have stuck to their guns in both the House and the Senate, I mean, they're there, but they're not going to get appointments. Many of their bills will be killed and murdered, long before, sent to summer study, voted down, not given a second, even though constituents absolutely are yelling for them. It's a combination of corporate interest pressure and then leadership using far more sticks and carrots up there than people realize.
Yeah, and so it's one thing I hope people understand is, so you're on a committee, but then you become a chairman of the subcommittee or the full committee, and those chairmanships and stuff are used to keep you in line, because you don't want to go back to tell your constituents that, well, I lost my chairmanship. I'm not as important as I used to be, and so they use that to control. They may not tell their members how to vote, but they make sure they understand what will happen if they don't vote the right way.
Yeah. I mean, when you see, it is member. So I don't want to, I can't cast all the blame at the feet of leadership. I mean, when someone tells you to be a coward and then you become a coward,
right,
for your constituents, when that's your fault, right? You don't have to say yes. And if enough of these guys actually had conservative moorings, we wouldn't have had any of this crap during COVID. We wouldn't have gone 4+ years without any meaningful illegal immigration reform. We wouldn't have had this grotesque, fiscally irresponsible school choice voucher bill. I'm all for educational freedom and choice, but not the way that it was done. And so all of these problems that we have, we wouldn't be doling out millions and billions in corporate welfare for sports stadiums and things like that to people that are millionaires and billionaires if people in the General Assembly weren't caving. I mean, people know what their constituents want, but what they bet on, and they are right 8 times out of 10, probably more, what they bet on is that their constituents are uninformed and that they're not paying attention, and that if they send them enough mail lying to them, or enough whatever, lying to them because of the corporate money they've amassed, that they can run a snow job on their constituents back in the district. And most of the time it works. And so that's why they're so complacent up there, is because they know that they can get away with it.
Yeah, and I addressed this in one of my other podcasts before about how the establishment, they actually love folks like Phil Williams at News Channel 5 and folks like that, because they love the liberal media, because they can always fall back on that and say, well, this is the liberal media. This is how they cover us. But when you have folks like what you are doing with the Tennessee Conservative News, and folks like Gary Humble, who are shining light on what Republicans who are supposed to be conservatives are doing, and then that's when you get the pushback, and that's when they don't want you all in there covering the news, and they won't give you access to the meetings and stuff like the News Channel 5s and stuff would get, because they can always just fall back on the liberal media stuff. And we've seen that happen in the national level now, but it gave rise to places like One American News and podcast that, Tucker, when he left Fox News and stuff. So it's given rise to the Tennessee Conservative News to be able to cover things like that and get that information out to the people.
Yeah, I mean, we punch above our weight, and we're hated for it by leadership because there's only a handful of people that keep up, right, in the whole state of Tennessee. 20, 30,000 people that keep up. Everybody else, they wouldn't know if they passed a piece of legislation up there to sell their home for a penny. Like, they wouldn't know. They'd never know. And so they're so used to that. And until our publication came along, and until really Tennessee Stands came along, there was never an organization that was telling conservative GOP primary voters across the state how their elected representatives are voting. All we ever had was the liberal corporate mainstream media that hates anything that is even remotely conservative. and they lambast it because they've done studies, and I think the most recent one showed that only 3% of reporters identify as being Republican. And so we've got the same situation. All these staff writers and editors at these corporately funded newspapers that Cameron Sexton loves to have in his press briefings, like, they are Democrats. And he knows that they are never going to attack him from the one place that he can be hurt, the right. They're only ever going to attack him from the left. Well, they don't have the votes for the left. It doesn't matter. These districts are gerrymandered. There's no way that you could. None of these districts hardly are competitive throughout the state. They're either a hard R or a hard D. There's a few that are better than others, but they know that, and so the chink in their armor is when their constituents are educated on their voting records and their lack of follow through on their campaign promises, and so we keep reporting on what we've done, and even though it is very frustrating, and I feel like often I'm not making a difference, I will see bills that pass that wouldn't have unless they were nervous. I see legislators like Bo Watson bringing this illegal immigration bill to allow LEAs to withhold funding for illegal immigrants in education and to charge them tuition. If he wasn't nervous about what happened in his backyard up here with Patsy Hazelwood losing the finance chair to Michelle, he wouldn't be doing that stuff. And so we have seen it be effective in making a lot of these legislators not doing anything that their constituents don't want, but to actually do something moderately, sort of, kind of what the constituents want. And we've seen bills be pulled. William Lambert, for example, brought a bill to give illegal aliens, make illegal aliens police officers in the state of Tennessee, and we reported on it, and it was immediately pulled. And a lot of other bills that we've seen that are just killed before they ever make it to committee, or bills that wouldn't have made it across the finish line that have. And then, we've also, through our reporting, been able to encourage people in the grassroots community to run. And I've heard it dozens of times. Well, Brandon, I wasn't ever thinking about running, and I started following your newspaper, and I heard how bad my state senator was. And I put it this way in closing. I get accused by leadership of a lot of things. I'm a libertarian. I'm not really a Republican. They call me names, all kinds of stuff. But you know what they never do? They never say, "You're not telling the truth."
Right.
I never get that. You're not telling the truth. What they're mad about is the fact that the truth is being told, and typically it wouldn't be.
Well, and I was sitting here thinking, if anybody thinks that the local media is telling you the truth about state politics, tell me one time that NBC, CBS affiliates, ABC in Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Memphis, wherever, has ran a story about the legislature being anti-gun or being too pro-life or putting too much restrictions on with the COVID deal. I think this is the first time we've got anything passed through any kind of committee, might have been today, might have been yesterday, to rein in the governor's power of what he did with COVID restrictions and stuff. And,
no, I can't point to any examples, Charles. I mean, they do not defend us. There is a liberal orthodoxy, a corporate orthodoxy, and the whole saying that I've heard recently that I'd never heard before was shekels come shackles. When large portions of your budget come from corporate entities,
yes,
which is what all these corporate media, like it's primarily national media buys, and then of course they're always going to be for the Titan Stadium stuff. Of course they're always going to be for woke Ford Motor Company getting billions of dollars. Why? Open up the paper. What's there? The Ford dealership. Advertising, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in the newspaper. Oh, here's a big article about buying season tickets for the Titans. It's all just a bunch of BS. You should take your vaccines. Now here's an ad by Pfizer. it's all the same crap. And so the only reason we have been able to tell the truth is because of two reasons. Number one, because I believe the Lord, even though I'm a blunt instrument, and sometimes I could probably do things with a little bit more nuance, put some kind of, I don't know, some kind of deep-seated kernel of resistance and a desire to see justice done, to be persistent enough to take all these slings and arrows and to be emotionally unintelligent enough to not care. And then our supporters. Like, I mean, we get little bitty checks. Some little old ladies who are on fixed income sending $25. I don't take any money out of it. I make my money running another business. I couldn't feed my family on what's left over from the Tennessee Conservative. We barely pay the bills. But because there are people that are out $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 checks, they just send them in the mail to us. And that's why we have been able to be so independent. Like, I don't have to take a corporate dollar. And our reporters have been generous enough to work for peanuts and to do it as a second job because they are conservatives through and through. But when your money doesn't come from those types of sources, and when the people who head up your organizations don't share those values, telling the truth is virtually impossible, and it can't be done.
Right, and just like with me, I don't get nothing from this. This cost me out of my pocket. I've never made a penny. It's cost me, I'm in the negative every year with this podcast, but it's what I do to help get the information out. And I know you've put plenty of money out of your own pocket, out of your own family's budget into this. And I will tell you, I appreciate you. I thank you for what you do.
Well, you're very kind. I'm still in arrears, but I'm not as far in arrears as I was. My job, I'm hoping that in maybe like 5 or 6 years, I can just pay myself back slowly. Not at inflation, if you get 30% with Joe Biden. So I'm never going to quite get there probably. I was used to be probably about $210,000 in the hole, and now I think I'm like 170 in the hole or something. And it's like every year I try to claw back, 20 grand or something to just get to zero. And so it's just tough. When I started this, I'm not going to quote the lady that told me because she got mad about it. I think it's a perfectly good quote. She said, "Now remember, you're starting this paper. Conservatives give conservatively." And so one thing I continually harp about is that you have to put your money where your mouth is. And I can tell if you're a conservative because I can look at your bank account and I can look at your calendar. And being a conservative is not something you feel, it is something you physically do. It's just like love and marriage. It's not about the feeling, it's about the obedience to your values that turns into something that is better than superficial love, or in the case of not really getting involved at the state and local level with your time and your money if you're a conservative Christian, and that is surface level conservatism, or I would almost call it faux conservatism. If it doesn't drive you to give up time or treasure, it's really not a value because you live your values.
Absolutely. And it gets to just like the end of the Declaration where they pledge to each other their honor and their sacred fortune. And, some people's afraid if they speak out, they're going to lose their honor. And if they don't want to give up none of their sacred fortune to save what's left of this country and this state. And people don't want to put no skin in the game to it. I know, as I said, that you have a family and stuff, so I don't want to keep you on any longer. I want you to be able to get back to your family this evening and spend some time with them. Before we go, tell folks where they can find you and where they can follow you and everything.
So, it's pretty simple. We have a website called TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Hard to type in, but good for search engine optimization. If you type in conservative news in Tennessee, which is why I named it that, conservative, or TennesseeConservativeNews.com, you can hit the subscribe button. You can text news, NEWS, to 423-205-5600. In radio, you're always supposed to say it twice. 423-205-5600. Text the word news there, and it'll sign you up. It'll ask for your email address and your name. And of course, we have really enjoyed being on Twitter. We got shadow banned on Facebook probably about in 2021, and it's never come back. Once they figured out we were conservative, we were getting more media engagement during COVID than any other news publication across the state. We still do, just about. And so they turned us off. So following us on X is a great place. I have not seen that speech is censored there at all so far, knock on wood. It's the only major platform that allows it. There's a lot of, side platforms that are small, but they don't really have the reach that we need to get the news out to folks. And almost anywhere you get your social media. And then finally, I used to do a bunch of interviews, but I've just ran out of time as my other business has grown and I've brought on more staff. But occasionally I do them, but I do a recap called The Big Seven, where I just run through the 7 biggest news stories in Tennessee every week. And you can find that anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Tennessee Conservative. But I appreciate what you do, Charles. Please don't quit.
Thank you.
It's like sometimes I'm like, I'd like to quit doing this.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to worry about this thing. I don't want to have to, have dirty looks every time I, am around politicians at Republican events. I liked it when I was hail fellow well met, because I helped them win campaigns and never asked any questions about how they governed. And so don't give up. And keep putting the content out there. Sometimes it's a slow roll, but eventually it catches.
Yes, and we're all busy. And as I told you in a text, anybody that's involved in the grassroots movement, they usually work a full-time job. They have a family. They attend church. They're running local groups. And everybody's just so busy. We got more on our plate than we can say grace over. And it's tough, and it can run you down. It can beat you down. And so I just want you to know I appreciate what you and your group are doing, your employees at this publication, and they do a good job. They're trying to keep people informed, and I appreciate that, and you're helping get the information out to the people in Tennessee. So thank you, Brandon, for what you do.
You're too kind, Charles, and I'm sorry it was so hard to get a hold of. Do it again if there's some kind of specific topic you want to talk about.
Yep.
The summer, about June, July, I have to call my phone at my other business to make sure it still works.
Yeah.
Like, it's just slow. But in the winter, it is on fire, and it's on fire at the same time the legislature is in session. And so I've got concurrent overlapping busy seasons, and it just wears me out. Like, I'm like a hermit. I eat, sleep, come into this office, work my tail off, and repeat for about 4 months. So I'm moving into my slow season coming up. It's getting a little bit better every week, and so I'd love to come back on at some point. And hopefully, I know we've met in person once or twice.
Yep.
So hopefully we can do it again here soon this summer. I got to throw something together just to get the subscribers together, and hopefully maybe you'll come.
Yeah, I will. And for any of those, as Brandon said, talking about running for office, I am holding a campaign management school in Knoxville on April the 5th. If you are interested in that, email me at charlescookpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll get you the information on that.
So
All
I'd
right.
recommend, guys, anything you can do. If you're going to run for office, please just don't walk out in the street and start. Go to some classes, read some books.
Yes.
I've watched so many good conservative candidates lose because they do not understand the rules of the game. It's like they're out there playing golf, and it's a basketball game, and they don't understand, like, why did I lose? Well, these are the rules. These are the tactics. These are the methods. This is what actually helps you win. And so make sure, guys, please, 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 do not. Most folks would not walk out to their car and change the oil themselves without watching 30 minutes worth of YouTube videos on how to do it. But boy, people walk out the door and run for office like it's as natural as whatever. And I'm like, no, study it, get some good resources and help. So I would encourage y'all to go there. The more you can learn, the better.
Yep. An 8-hour class and $45 is an investment in yourself. So,
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you joining me, and we'll link up again and have you on again, and hopefully we won't have no technical difficulties next time.
Let's hope not.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Have a good
Take
one.
care.
Enjoy your family.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Thanks, Brandon, for coming on and everything. And we appreciate him and what he does for the state of Tennessee with his news coverage. And so with that, you folks have a good one. We'll catch you on the next podcast. Bye-bye.